Welcome to the regular council meeting of the Township of Whitewater Region for November 17th, 2021 at 4:49 p.m. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of the council of our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendships. We also like to thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Please stand for the prayer. Almighty God, we give thanks for the great blessings which have been bestowed on Canada and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and the peace that we enjoy. Guide us in our deliberations as Township councillors and strengthen us in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. Grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to preserve the blessings of this country for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Amen. Okay, at this time I'd ask any council members if there's any disclosure of interest for this evening. I'm interested. Seeing none, we'll move on to zoning bylaw amendment. Is this the public meeting? We're starting on 4.1. Yes, please. So I read the recommendation first. Okay, so we're going to 4.1, which is zoning bylaw amendment 721 Caroline. So we will go to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll just read through a quick planner statement pertaining to tonight's public meeting pertaining to zoning bylaw amendments. If any person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater Region before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Under Section 3411 of the Planning Act, it states that if council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application in 20 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to LPAT by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. And lastly here, under Section 3419 of the Planning Act, it states that not later than 20 days after giving notice of the passing of a bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submission at the public meeting or made written submission to council before the bylaw was passed may appeal to LPAT by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is for part of Lot 16, Concession 8, Caroline, which is 1721 Caroline. Will staff please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, thanks so much. So this application is submitted by Murray Martin. He's the owner of the property. Murray constructed recently a detached garage having 5,000 square feet. Murray operates a general contractor business and has been using that garage or a portion of the garage as a home industry. So currently the provisions of the zoning bylaw outline you can only use 539 square feet of a detached garage or accessory building for your home industry. However, he's proposing as a result of this application to use the entirety of that structure for his home industry. So that would equate to 5,000 square feet, and he's also included 250 square feet for a small addition if he chose to do so in the future. So this is generally consistent with Whitewater Metals. So Whitewater Metals back in, I think it was maybe about 5 to 10 years ago, filed an application very similar to this to increase the home industry size to 5,000 square feet. So very, very similar. The concerned property is surrounded by agricultural uses and residential uses to the south. The property is generally buffered from the residential and any impacts from the business on the adjacent residential uses. So staff deem that the use is compatible with the rural and agricultural character of the area, and we're supportive of the application. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I understand no one has registered to speak and no comments were received. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 16, Concession 8, 1721 Caroline. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Mackay. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. The next amendment is for the property located at part of Lot 20, Concession 8, Caroline Olmsted. Will the planner please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, so this application pertains to a surplus farm dwelling that was created just as early as October 14th with the Township's Committee of Adjustment. So those members of council who sit on the Committee of Adjustment will recognize the names here and the particular property. So George and Julie Olmsted filed for a surplus lot dwelling having a size of 4.5 acres. So that's their sort of farmstead. So that property contains the dwelling, several accessory buildings, and some additional lands that are not suitable for crops. So as a condition of approval, because this particular property is designated as agriculture and zoned accordingly as agriculture, one of the conditions of the severance is to restrict future residential uses on the retained land. So the retained lands are the property in question here. They're 194 acres in size, so that would protect those agricultural lands forever and a day for the purposes of crops and agricultural purposes. So again, staff are supportive of this, and it was a condition of approval from the previous severance. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I understand no one has registered to speak and no comments were received, so the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 20, Concession 8, Caroline. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. All in favour? Oh, sorry. Yes, please.
So both with this recommendation and the motion and the previous one, it doesn't say what, it doesn't identify what the zoning is going to. Should it not for recording purposes? Because the zoning actually, the motion is just going to say that in the minutes. That's what I'm used to, saying that it's going to a certain zoning.
Yeah, I understand it, from one zone to the other.
Yeah.
So the motion here, once the motion is passed, council later in the meeting will pass a bylaw.
Okay.
And that bylaw will speak specifically to that change. So from
That's what I was kind of
correct.
thinking, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin?
Ivan, just for clarification, like, I don't quite understand, because this is the owner of the total property that's filing this application?
Yeah, so the property as it stands today, both red and green here, it's all one property today. So the Olmsteds have filed an application to sever off the house, which is shown in green here.
Yes.
So that went to the...
I understand all.
Yeah. So they own everything now. They
Okay.
haven't sold off the retained lands yet.
Okay, I always thought it was the person that bought it would then apply for the application. Is that?
No, so this all has to be dealt with before they could actually physically sever the
Before.
lot, yeah.
But my next question then, the retained or the large severed portion, there can't be any buildings, any houses built on that?
That's correct. So it's all designated as agriculture, so it needs to be protected per the official plan policies, so that's correct.
Okay, no, that's what I thought. I wasn't aware of that, because usually somebody buys the property and then they're the ones that apply.
Yeah. So in this case, the owners the current owners are proposing to sell it to an adjacent farmer. So there's going to be a gentleman, an agricultural operator who's purchasing the larger land. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I have no problems as long as the retained parcels there can't be a house built on it, then I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll vote on the motion. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to the last zoning amendment. It's for property located at part of Lot 39, Westmeath Plan 60, Westmeath Road. Will the planner please give an overview of the application?
Yes, thanks so much. So the present application is submitted by the Renfrew County Catholic District School Board for the property that currently, for a property that was acquired by them in 2019. It formerly had a dwelling on it, which was demolished. So the property in question is fronts on Westmeath Road. It's not extremely large, but it is a property that will ultimately forms part of Our Lady of Grace School. As a result of increasing number of students at that local school, the school board's looking to install a third portable classroom. So there's currently 2 there now. While they're not shown on the aerial, you see a portable, but there's in fact 2 of them there. Looking to put a third one there on this additional land. Now, what's happened is they haven't consolidated all the properties to get those 2 properties together. So this still sits there as a private or an individual entity, if you will. So they want to put the portable classroom directly adjacent to the other one. So they're looking to reduce those setbacks. So the rear yard setback would be moved down to 0. And the side yard setback would be reduced to 1.2 meters. So the 1.2 meters is consistent with a previous application for the school property in 2013. So ultimately, it'll serve the purposes of the school board. We haven't received any contacts from any of the adjacent landowners who received the notice. On one side, there's the church, and the other one is a residential property. So staff are supportive of this. We did note to the school board that portable classrooms is probably not the long-term solution to expansion. So they definitely need to be looking at potentially additions to the school itself moving forward. So generally you don't see 4 or 5 portable classrooms. I think 3 should be sort of a limit, and so they're going to examine those options. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Just curious, a question on the tax rate. That would put that property as well classified the same as the school? Sorry, I'm looking at Sean maybe.
Can you just clarify the question? I was dived in over here to something. Sorry.
No, that's all right. That piece of property, now it's being used as school property. They're expanding the school zone, so that will become taxed like a school?
Correct. That would be my assumption.
Okay, and churches aren't taxed, right?
Correct.
Okay. The second question is just, and I'm interested because it comes up next in our next agenda item, the active transportation plan and parks and rec and all that kind of stuff. Are they planning to change the entrances to the school or any of that priority? We just put the sidewalk in and the crosswalk, and is that all remaining the same use? They're just adding this to the current envelope?
They're just, at this, as part of this application and this discussion with them, they're only proposing to add this classroom, so it'll be accessed internally by the existing network. They did speak about potentially putting a parking lot fronting onto Westmeath Road, but I've advised them they have a little bit of a process to do for that. But as it stands, there's no changes to access and the such.
Perfect. And last one, Mayor, if I could, is I applaud the fact that they're growing, and I love the fact that we've seen a school in our municipality grow, and to have 3 portables is, necessary in the short term to medium term. I'm wondering if we can somehow get invited to the table about any long-term plans, and how would we do that when it's a school board? Is there a way we can do that? Because it might influence some of our plans, whether it's road or rec within the community. I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of how we might be able to work with them for any future building. I don't know who's best to answer that one.
I would just say that we could certainly communicate through myself or through CEO Tremblay to the school board themselves to see what their anticipated future projections are and future plans are, and we could communicate that to council, if you will.
Perfect. I'd like to say we would insist on being part of that, but it's out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I understand there's no one registered to speak, so we will move on to the motion. That the motion of the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 39, Westmeath Plan 60, Westmeath Road. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Olmsted. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Ivan. Now we move on to 4.4, draft activity transportation. Kimberley Hutton. Who's looking after that? Sean?
Sorry. They're coming in now. Sorry. He's putting her on, and then I.
Okay.
Not you, Sean. Sorry.
They're coming virtual. All right. And it's Kimberley Hutton. Okay, so we'll go to Rob.
So the active transportation plan was a budgeted item for this year's budget. We've been working with WSP, and Kim's been leading the charge there. There was a community survey and also a workshop with some members of council that are in that that area of responsibility, and a bunch of our local stakeholders such as Borca and others. So I just, Kim's going to give you an overview of the plan and the consultation. I just want to reiterate that it's a living document, so it's not something that's set in stone. It is a large document, so although Kim's giving you an outline today, staff will bring it back probably the second meeting in December. So if there's any kind of concerns or additional questions, you can send them my way, and then I can feed them through to Kim. But this is how we look at walking, cycling, and just getting around in the municipality in different ways. So Carmen has the presentation up and ready, Kim, and so I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, great. So I am Kim Hunton. I am I'm with WSP. I'm the manager of transportation planning here in Ottawa, and a senior engineer with WSP as well. Nikki is with me here. She's on the presentation as well. She has been the project engineer on this project. So I wanted to thank your worship and councillors for having us here today to go through and give you this overview of what the plan is that we've been developing for Whitewater region. So I can't see the presentation, so I'll just, if we move to the next slide, I see you, Robert. You look very nice. Hi. So are we on slide 2? Good. Yeah, you're very, it's good. So, great, thanks very much. So overall, we just wanted to give you a bit of an overview on what the study is itself, what the vision and goals is of the plan, what we heard from the consultation and the engagement that Robert mentioned, how the network was developed, the process that we did, and what the overall active transportation network is. And then we have some information about getting it built and some of the key recommendations that came out of the plan. So next slide, please. So the plan, as Robert mentioned, is a long-term strategic plan. This is meant to be sort of a blueprint for staff and decision makers to be able to start implementing active transportation facilities and programming initiatives and policy side of things that change the culture and support the plan itself. Things change over time. We've put together an implementation plan and recommendations, but we never know what's going to happen and around the corner. You know, budget priorities change and these types of things. And there's also always different kinds of grants and stuff like that coming from the different government levels. And so it is a living document. It's meant to change, but it's meant to provide that guidance and also the background and the justification for when you're applying for grant programs to get some additional money headed your way for your community. And so overall, what we do is it's a 4-step process that we did. First thing we do is look at existing conditions. We get information about what the existing facilities are that are out there today. We look at existing policy. We look at what the surrounding area is up to in different jurisdictions and what they're doing within the area. Step 2, this all leads into the network development, where we identify where the gaps are or where we think good connections are going to be and identify route selection criteria on how we're going to set up the network itself. From there, we get the project list and prioritize those projects. And we had 2 pieces of information from the community. We had the community workshop where we had 25 different people that were coming and giving us their input on what we were proposing, as well as the survey. And the survey gave us a context of what's happening locally. Step 3 then becomes the policy and design guidance. And this is where we take a look and put together a trail design guidelines for how things will be developed in the future and moved forward, as well as policies and AT supportive strategies. And so these are some of the things that help change the culture and move people and change their minds a little bit, and education about safety and some of these things that really help support. There's one thing about building the infrastructure, but you need to have these supportive measures in place as well that kind of go along hand in hand and make it a success. The last piece is the plan development, where we come up with the implementation plan. And this is where things like the budget and that we develop the cost estimates and the funding strategy piece of it, as well as the report, which is the large document that Robert mentioned, and here giving you an overview of what it is that we've been up to. Next slide, please. So the vision really is to provide a connected, I don't want to read it word for word, but really the vision is a connected network that's going to provide a safe way that people are going to be able to get to key destinations, the natural areas that Whitewater region has to offer, and really give people the choice and the ability to make the choice to move into active transportation, and that overall then achieves a healthy and high quality of life. Active transportation, there's been numerous studies that, when people are more active and there's better active transportation facilities, that the overall community improves their health, it reduces healthcare costs and things like that. There's a lot of good evidence that shows how much it helps with obesity and heart disease and a whole bunch of mental illnesses, and then also just the high quality of life of how people are commuting and getting around. The goals themselves that you see here, there's the 7 goals. Everything that we've done and made the recommendations for tie back to what these goals are. And that's making active transportation a viable travel choice for people in Whitewater region and the community, having a healthy and livable community that provides the tourism and the economic growth opportunities. Tons and tons of people, especially right now, where people are staying a little bit closer to home, are really turning to active transportation and touring around Ontario and areas that are closer to them. So there's great opportunities there. Making active transportation convenient and enjoyable so people can get out and make that choice, and supporting them to do that with that culture side. This is where the programming initiatives come in. Community involvement, getting people involved in the development of the plan and through as it gets implemented, making sure that what we're proposing is financially sustainable and actually possible to happen. And then we really wanted to also embrace the rural context and what Whitewater region has to offer from that perspective, and these with the natural sort of features and that side of things. So what we heard, the public survey, we did the 2 different consultation pieces. The first one was a public survey. It was an online survey. We had 219 people that responded, which was great. And basically, when you're looking at that first question, the purpose for active transportation travel, people right now, when you look at it, they're really, really using it well for fitness and recreation, and then for tourism, which is a lovely way to see the community. And then when we look at going to work and schools and the shopping trips, we end up seeing lower numbers. Those are kind of the target areas where we want to get to and get people out using active transportation. Although that said, of the respondents, these are pretty good numbers when you look at them, of the people that responded to the survey. The one thing that we did find a little bit, it sort of also translates with that fitness and tourism component, where we see that it was very important when we asked for the reasons for using the trails and cycling. Exactly, it's very important for the recreation and for the tourism side, those big blue lines. And the surprising piece is that people didn't think it was very important for trips to school, and encouraging our youth and our kids to use active transportation gives really good teachings of that. And so I think that's a combination of one, a lot of the community are on buses. Maybe they're not able to do active transportation to the schools, but also some of that mentality of it's not really, it's easy to drive and to get to school in a different way. So that was some of the other area. Next slide, please. So the other piece was asking for the top reasons for not using active transportation right now. The middle one there, distances are too long for destinations where I travel. That's one that's a little bit challenging. Obviously, things are far away, and if you can't bike that far or you can't walk that far, it makes it hard. This is where something like a programming initiative like e-bikes and having some e-bikes available and that kind of thing, or getting people more knowledge about e-bikes might help. But that one is a tricky one. The other one, though, 44% don't feel safe biking on existing facilities. That obviously speaks directly to the plan and implementing infrastructure. And then the 22% of it not being convenient is a little bit of that programming side and sort of shifting the culture. It might not be convenient, but with the right facilities, with the right equipment on your site, on your bike, the right clothing, these kinds of things, you can cycle for lots of different reasons, and maybe it makes it more convenient. We just need to give that education component that coincides with the infrastructure. The other piece is really about the top, sorry, one more, the top comfort levels of using the different types of trails and cycling. And the only one really here I wanted to highlight was that the very uncomfortable, the 40% of cycling on roads without bike lanes or hardened shoulders, that those people are feeling not comfortable, and that speaks directly to that infrastructure component within the plan. Okay, next slide now, please. There's a lot of words on this one. I'm not going to read them all. I just wanted to highlight, this was the community workshop. And what we did was we had, it was all done virtually. It was an interactive workshop where we were using a tool online where people could fill in their information. And we had 4 different activities where we were asking. There was a number of different key stakeholders that attended the community workshop. Local businesses, the interest groups, the advocacy groups for cycling, Borka as was one of them, as Robert mentioned, also the Ottawa Valley Cycling Active Transportation Alliance, people that were supporting in different sides of things and different partnerships that could form later on. And there was 4 different activities. The first one was looking at the key destinations. So we had identified a number of key destinations we felt were in the region, and we wanted to make sure that everybody agreed with that, and if we missed any, and highlight which ones those are, and if there were some that were higher priority than others. Activity number 2 looked at route identification, and so we had developed at that time a proposed route map, and we asked folks that were attending, are these in the right location? Is there some reason we should be considering a different one? Is there a parallel route that would be better? These kinds of things, and then also asked for information about which ones they saw as the highest priorities, because this was going to help feed into the implementation piece later. Activity number 3 was the prioritization criteria. And so this is where, when we have our selection criteria set up for our routes, but also our prioritization later of our projects, what are those prioritization pieces that people saw as the key ones to focus on? From cycling, it was, the comfortable and safe, and walking, really, it was about connecting key destinations, schools, and community amenities. And then the last one is the programming initiatives. And these are some of the ones where partnerships can be formed with local businesses and with the advocacy groups to really help support that change into an active culture. And so things like partnering with local businesses to provide bike racks, or formalizing the advisory committee, or even like the bike donating program and building off of the bike bank that the Ottawa Valley Cycling Active Transportation Alliance has going right now. Next slide, that's good. Network development. So the network development, so there's those pieces, and to get to the network, we do 4 different steps. The first one is, as I mentioned, was the existing conditions, and these are the gaps, identifying, this is identifying where the existing facilities are, where the different planned works are, and policy pieces that might help us develop where the network is. It also looks at routes that exist today for, some of the advocacy groups and interest groups that are out there today have already set up routes that they're comfortable with biking on and that kind of thing. So we look at that and make sure that we are considering those. Second step is identifying where those gaps are, looking at that selection criteria, and coming up with what the route plan is. The next one is investigations on if they're the right routes. So we take a look. Desktop Streets View right now is obviously a really big tool that we use, but we also then take a look in the field if there's anything special or in particular that we need to take a peek at. And so this identifies if there's a road bed that we know we will never be able to widen or put hardened shoulders on, we would make sure that we're looking at a parallel route or something different, or some sort of different sort of initiative. And then the last step is really confirming the network and the selected facilities. We'll talk about the selected facilities in a little bit, but this is really selecting that the right routes were selected and what those types of facilities are going to be on the actual network itself. And this is related to the cycling piece. So for our route selection criteria, we have different prioritization criteria. Pedestrian facilities, we are looking at, are there facilities on another side of the road? Is there a crossing option where maybe we don't have to build a sidewalk on another side of the road? There's a key destination on the other side of the road, but by putting a pedestrian crossover, we can connect to it. Schools, community amenities, those kinds of things, and connecting, and then the cost itself. Cycling, we look at how comfortable and safe it is, if it's conveniently direct, or is it connecting again to some of those key destinations and facilities, the natural areas, the pathways that we have, and the trails, and whether it's easy enough to follow and there's no major barriers. Do we have to cross a big highway or a waterway or something, a rail line, active rail line, something like that. And so those are the prioritization. This helps with the route selection, but also with the prioritization later on. Next slide, please. So when I spoke of the facility type identification, we use the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18, which is for cycling facilities. And there's two different nomographs that they have, and it's all based on speed and traffic volume. One is for the urban suburban kind of context, and the other is for rural. Rural tends to be where we have our paved shoulders. It's the long stretches between our villages and hamlets in Whitewater region. In the case of the villages and the hamlets, we have we have the more the urban and the suburban context side of things for those ones, because we have higher density, we have more amenities, we have lower speeds, and we have more users with the pedestrians and those sides a little bit more. So we end up using the urban and suburban context in that case. Next slide, please. We wanted to just give you a bit of a highlight. I think you've probably seen a lot of these different types of facilities, but just before we start talking about what we're actually proposing to build, we wanted to give you a bit of a highlight of what those different facilities are. So assigned bike route or shared space is essentially meant typically for the lower speeds, lower volume roadways. And this literally means shared space. Everybody's in the same space, but there's very usually a lower risk of conflict or a lower risk of pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles all coming together at the same time. Paved shoulders and buffered paved shoulders, again, you're very familiar with these. Paved shoulders are the dedicated space beside the travel lanes for bikes to travel in, pedestrians to use. A buffered paved shoulder is typically just on higher volume or higher speed where a little more separation is needed. There's two different kinds. Obviously, the paved shoulders serve as a maintenance piece where having that little bit of extra paved shoulder can help with the longevity of the paved surface. For a cycling facility, a paved shoulder should really be 1.5 meters, 1.2 meters in a constrained or a pinch point. The last one here on the slide is the in-boulevard multi-use pathway. This is where we have all of our active transportation users completely off the roadway. So it's bi-directional, typically two ways, pedestrians, cyclists, skateboarders, joggers, everybody is in the same path. They're able to pass each other. It's typically around 3 meters wide, but they're completely separated within the road right of way from the road, the drivers, on the roads. Next slide, please. Bike lanes are really more in the urban context or more in like the hamlets or that side where we might have sidewalks or curbs, and they're basically that paved shoulder just within the roadway itself. A shared walking cycling facility, we bring this middle one up because we have a few cases where we are recommending where we have maintenance strips currently. Beechburg, Foresters Falls are two examples where we are looking at converting those, repurposing those spaces for a shared walking and cycling facility. Typically, these are behind a mountable curb, and it means if we are using that space for the active transportation users, it tends to be more cost effective because we don't need to widen the roadway to provide that dedicated space for them with what the speeds and the volumes are. And then the last one is the off-road trail, and these are the ones that are, completely off the road. They're not even close to the right of way and just, through the more natural areas. Next slide, please. So the recommended AT network itself, so what you see here is the recommended network, and you can see that we were really focusing, hopefully you can see, we were really focusing on the connectivity. So things like having loops, using Gore Line and the triangle, the Lookout Road, La Passe Road, coming up with the Gore Line, that side of things that you can do a nice little bike ride. Having connectivity between the hamlets, so like Westmeath to La Passe with Gore Line, or also the last pieces of connecting. We have some existing paved shoulders, but if we want to connect Beechburg and Foresters Falls, there were these little sections on either end that would need to be done. And so that connectivity between those areas and those more settled populated areas really help with that connectivity side of things. The other piece was the connections with the trails themselves. So we have the Algonquin Trail that runs along the west side. And so we were looking at connections to the Algonquin Trail itself, and then also to the potential CN rail line. particularly through Beechburg. You know, the Algonquin Trail is wonderful, and it's a great facility to the west, but so much of the Whitewater region community is to the to the east of it, that, you know, it's nice to have that potential with the CN Trail that runs and connects some of those community side of things. The next slide, I'm probably not going to really speak to this one. This is really just a blow up a little bit more of some of those facilities within the more populated areas for the candidate cycling routes. I think we'll talk more about the next one actually, which is the sidewalks. And that is again, the focus on key destinations. So the solid lines, solid pink lines are existing sidewalks, and then the dashed lines are proposed sidewalks. And so again, we were looking at connecting to key destinations such as the schools and the parks, and to the trail facilities. So you can, you know, again, Cameron Street, and then to the CN in Beechburg, for example. And then also the connections, if we didn't have a sidewalk on one side of the road already, we would look at that as one of the areas to include new facilities and new connections. So next slide. There's a lot of information to cover. So the AT network summary. So in the end, you can see in the top left corner, you already have a great start on an existing kilometer. So 127 kilometers of existing facilities, and these are all facility types. So this includes the shared space that we have on our network already. But those shared spaces means that people are comfortable, should be comfortable riding in those shared spaces, and that it just forms the closure of a loop or some different connection that can happen. So overall, we have almost 120 kilometers of proposed kilometers. That's on all the road types. 73, almost 75 of those would be Whitewater region project specific. The other ones are related to county projects that would have to happen on county roads, or related to like development pieces. When we look at the short, so for the implementation plan, we look at breaking it down into a short term, a medium term, and then a long term plan. So the short term is in the next 5 years, medium being beyond that, the 6 to 10 year timeframe, and then long term are really the rest of the projects. We don't go too much into those details because who knows what's happening in 10 years, but they're the rest of the projects that complete the network, but they would be implemented 10 years down the road. Because it's a living document, because there are always changes and funding available and grant programs and these kinds of things, some of these projects that are suggested in the short and medium term, maybe some of the medium term move into the short term, maybe some of the medium term move into long term, some of the long term move up. It's very flexible in how they end up getting done, and they're tied to road works and capital works, grant money, and obviously the budget side of things. So there is flexibility within it, but this gives a good starting point and a good guidance to kind of start developing that overall network. At the end of the short and medium term, you can see that sort of highlight at the bottom, the short and medium term projects. 30% of the total proposed network at the end of the medium term would be complete. 75% of the high priority projects. So we prioritize the projects based on high, medium, low. So 75% of those ones that we've identified as high priority projects for connectivity would be complete by the end of the medium term. 6% of the CN trail, and this is just one to kind of highlight because it's one of those ones about protecting the rail line and recommendations later about protecting the rail line. And then 50% of the sidewalks that are linking our key destinations. The other 50% would be things that are identified to complement the network. So maybe where an example would be like Robertson Road in Beechburg, where it's more to the residential area. It was highlighted by the public as one that is wanted. And so that's where those ones fit in. There may not be a specific key destination, but it's been highlighted as a key priority project. And so we've kept it into the program and implementation over the short and the medium term. And overall then, that would be about 20% of the total implementation cost is what would be covered in that short to medium term. And we'll talk about that. There's another slide that talks to that one in a minute. Next slide, please. So the big push really in the first 5 years is the CN Trail upgrade in Beechburg that provides a good connection within that community, as well as the Foresters Falls Road. So there's facilities there that are proposed behind the mountable curb. And because the county already has proposed works there, there's efficiency, cost efficiencies when road works are already happening. And so by doing those and enhancing the facilities that are behind the mountable curbs at this time in that short term, when the road construction is already happening, that's kind of where the push was there. From a sidewalk perspective, Cameron Street in Beechburg it serves the public school, but it's also in conjunction with the already approved pedestrian crosswalk, and it complements that from that side. Similar in the medium term, again, sort of tied to that proposed roadworks, we have Beechburg Road, where again, it's looking at those maintenance strips and those asphalt areas behind the mountable curb. And because there's already roadworks going on there, having those converted into the active transportation facilities and making them the more defined facilities that go in conjunction with the roadworks. So these are kind of some of the pieces of getting it built. Next slide, please. And then overall, the total estimated cost for these 73.4 very specific kilometers over the 10 more and plus years is almost $5 million. In the short and medium term, the projects that have been brought forward for the implementation plan are $1 million for the short and medium. So that's over the next 10 years. It's based on an annual budget there that gets broken down. Really, the key considerations are the fact that there's multiple places to get the money from. There's the capital piece where we're connecting it with capital roads projects and some of the projects that will be implemented as part of that. There's township costs and township funding specifically related to the cycling infrastructure implementation, as well as some of the programming pieces that go along with that. And then the county funding as well, that, where we get work done on county roads. And we encourage and help try and get Renfrew County to come and do work within, well, I'm not going to, Robert's going to work on getting the county to come in and do works in Whitewater region, and they get to pay for that. So that's where the county funding comes from. So it's really the combo of those three funding sources. And then also typically, obviously there's always lots of grant money that comes up for grabs. And so if you become expert grant writers, there's sometimes the potential for up to 40% additional grants. And so that $1 million would become like the $1.4 million with some help with the government, and the plan itself gives you that basis to do those applications and show that you have a plan in place. Next slide, please. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we have 24 recommendations that come out of the plan. They're broken into network design, implementation, and outreach. The network is really looking at things like having pedestrian crossovers, purchasing and protecting abandoned rail lines, which provide fantastic connections that are they already have such a great base built. They're already at an accessible grade level. They're already cleared for you in a lot of cases. So these are really good facilities to have. The pedestrian crossover, like I mentioned, and also just having the implementation of the network itself. The design side, we've included some specific design guidance in the plan that is related to the Whitewater region context. And this is like areas where you might want to consider putting delineator posts. Delineator posts are those vertical posts that would provide some separation without an actual physical, well, it's a physical barrier, but it's not a built, it doesn't have a capital construction cost piece to it. It's just the installation, as well as community safety zones. The outreach is the programs that we talk about that support them. And these are things like family events, bike rides, organized community events, having a student there to help organize some bike parking implementation, that kind of thing. And then from the implementation side, we look at policy as well as the infrastructure. We spoke to the infrastructure side, but policy things such as having policy related to new development and having the way that the site plan is connected or designed, considering the active transportation plan, getting some of the development side to build some of our facilities, paved shoulder policy, if you're going out and doing a road and it's on the active network, put in the 1.5 meter paved shoulder, as well as shared space on trails, because we end up with a lot of different users on trails of different kinds of speeds. So we have the walkers with the strollers and small kids on tricycles, but we also have ATVs and there's shared space, and those are very different kinds of users. So there's a policy piece connected to that. Next slide, please, which is really the end. And it's basic. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Mayor. That concludes my presentation. And I did want to thank you for having us again. And I really did, at this moment, just when I can still speak, say thank you to your staff, because they've been a real pleasure to work with on this project and getting the plan together.
Thank you. That was a great presentation, and you went through a lot in a short period, so
Well, I was trying to.
hardly time to take a breath. So I will open it up right now. If there's any questions, please. Seeing, Councillor Olmsted, please.
Yeah, more of a comment. Thank you. Obviously, there was an absolute ton of work put into that presentation. And I'm really happy to see the vision. It really takes a lot of vision to put something like this together to connect communities, and Whitewater region is obviously a vast region. But when you do the legwork, it's amazing what kind of can be accomplished down the road, whether this is, you're not talking in 2 or 3 years to connect all this, you're talking probably 10 years. About 10 years ago, I was in Finland and Sweden for about 2 weeks. And I don't know if you've ever had a chance to see the network they have over there, but there's hardly any vehicles on the roads over there anymore. So all of these active transportation lanes are connected to their rail system, high-speed rail system, and connected to car parks. And so there's very, very little vehicles actually on the roads, because everybody's biking from their home to the local rail station. Unfortunately, we've torn out a rail system here, but now we can use that as infrastructure for some of these lanes. So again, thank you very much for the legwork and the vision. I think it's a really exciting time in Whitewater region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olmsted. Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson, please.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. I've gone through most of the plan, but it's incredibly detailed, and acknowledged plans don't last past the day that they're issued, but it gives us a framework, something to work with, and I'm really excited. And the complaints, not the complaints, but the feedback that we get from the community, the big ticket items I'm seeing addressed just right off the top. And I'm really happy with that. So I'm looking forward. I'm excited as to the next steps. Probably staff are like, oh, but I'm excited for what's going to happen next, and I look forward. We'll have another opportunity, right, Rob, to rediscuss this in December 17th. So no, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's a point in the right direction, right? So Councillor Mackay, please.
Yeah, you forgot to mention the Renfrew County walking trails right across from my house. There's about, I think there's 24 kilometers of bike trails in there, and Bork uses all winter. That's a pretty important place to, so I don't see it, so I'm kind of hurt.
Is that because you're so used to being on it every day with your exercise program?
That's it.
Any other questions?
I should just point out, just in terms of the maps, that they do have those in there. They have the Borka trails on, and they also have the county trails. So Papin, as an example, connects as well through. So they're in the, not in this PowerPoint, but in the actual plan. They've been, we got that GIS layer included. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you very much, Kimberley, for your presentation. And it's a lot to take in, a lot to digest, and a lot of colored pages to look at. It keeps the councillors awake when they're reading it. So thank you very much for that, and we'll accept this for information. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, moving on. Announcements. Reeve Rigier.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one. Warden Debbie Robinson, Chair Peter Emo, and the Ontario Winter Games hosted the 100-day kickoff on Monday. And Minister Lisa MacLeod attended and advised that there was going to be an additional $400,000 added to the games. So that was exciting news for sure. I just wanted to put a plug out there that they are Chris Plow, Chairperson Chris Plow, is still looking for volunteers. So if anyone would like to offer any services, any time during the games, I'll give you his number. It's 613-717-1393, or his email is chrisplow@gmail.com. So I'll put that out there. You can reach out to him if anybody has any availability at all. And yeah, so it's going to be an exciting time for the county of Renfrew, and it's going to be a great boost for the economy everywhere. So we needed this after this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
Just a question, if anybody, I was going to update the various Christmas parades, but I don't know of all the dates and times, so I don't want to screw it up. So hopefully, Carmen, are you going to be, I know that you know some of the details, but I'm hoping somebody will update council here.
Do you want me to say the dates right now? I can,
Sure.
I'll put them in the minutes. Okay, so the Cobden Parade was not a parade. The Cobden celebration will be November 27th. I think that's the Saturday.
Whatever the Saturday is, last Saturday in November. Last Saturday in November.
I'm not sure of the time yet, so I could probably send an email out for that. I think it's through the day. So businesses on Main Street are asked to decorate their main streets, and if you want to put a float in, it will just, there won't be a parade, but you can, we're hoping that we can park it on the street or something so people can walk through and see it. The Beechburg is in the evening on the December 4th, which is also a Saturday. It's an evening parade.
Time on that?
I will have in 1 second. Who, does somebody know the time?
It's either 5:30 or
Oh,
6,
sorry.
one of the two.
5:30 will be early.
Oh, do you guys have more information? Oh, here it is. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared for this question. And then Westmeath, I was told is also, Westmeath, I'm not sure of. I know it is going to be on the 5th. I heard it was a night parade. Is that?
Yes, it's usually at 5, it usually starts at 5 o'clock
Okay,
normally.
Sorry.
So. maybe-
Beechburg is at
Maybe
5:30.
Councillor Nicholson could check into that and send us an email and make sure that we're there on time if we participate.
5:30. It starts at 5:30. I will definitely be sending in, by the end of the week, more information to council about that. We are putting a float together for the Beechburg and the Westmeath and decorating the outside for the Cobden.
Just to confirm, 27th is the Cobden one. It's a stationary, and businesses are, they'll be putting on some things inside their businesses. December 4th is Beechburg evening, 5:30, and December 5th in Westmeath about the same time, 5:30.
Usually 5.
Sorry, 5.
I'll confirm with Westmeath because I never received anything about Westmeath yet.
Westmeath is confirmed for 5:30 on the 5th.
30? Okay.
Okay, so they changed the time. Normally it's 5. Okay.
It's one last time to forget, 5:30. you.
I guess Councillor Nicholson, if he finds out anything different, he'll send us an email, so we, it was always 5, so, okay, fine. All right. Anything else, Councillor Umstead? Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin?
Just one item. After the Santa Claus celebration in Cobden, that evening there's a tree lighting at Veterans Memorial Park. I think it's 7 in the evening. There'll be refreshments. There'll be some hot apple cider. I know that for sure. So that's on the Saturday after the celebration in Cobden. I think it's 27th. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay?
None at this time.
Councillor Jackson?
Yes. I would just like to set the record straight regarding an article that was posted in the Eganville Leader on October 27th regarding the notice of motion for eliminating the reeve. I was quoted in the paper as having said the following. Councillor Jackson said she is aware there are meetings called by the county warden where the mayor is invited to attend as head of the municipality and the reeve is not. What I did say after reviewing the meeting was what we have seen, I think, and through speaking with our reeve, is that a lot of times the mayor is called in during an emergency. During the pandemic, there are so many things that the mayors have to be involved in. I've contacted the writer of the story, and the correction will be forthcoming shortly. But I just want to reiterate, when I didn't say the county, and my implication was not the county was calling the meeting. Sometimes it's the Renfrew County Health Unit, as well as the provincial calling the mayors the head of council and not the Reeves. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, so just to add to that, I do sit on Renfrew County. I'm in fact in a meeting tomorrow with Dr. Cushman, and when the province was having them, I was invited to them all. So you were correct, I was invited. I don't know if the Reeve was, but I was. So just a little clarification on that. Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Good. Just 2 points, Mayor. The first one is there's also a tree lighting in Westmeath. It is December 3rd at 7 p.m. So it looks like that weekend is full Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night.
And just so you remember, last year it poured rain.
Yes. Yeah, it was a very wet evening. But so December 3rd at 7 p.m., Westmeath Ball Diamond. And I'll forward these two posters to Carmen for distribution to council. The second announcement, it's just a follow-up. I had spoken to council earlier about the Killaloe CRC that had been hosting a Game On event in Westmeath for youth, a free event that they had gotten Trillium Fund for. And they were doing this with the intent of hopefully being able to extend it to other communities within Whitewater region. Just for your information, they have 25 youth registered in this free program. So it's an after-school program. And it includes students from Our Lady of Grace in Westmeath, Jean Lajoie, and Cobden Public School. So outstanding turnout for one of our smallest communities. It's been made viable by a partnership they have with WDRA to use the ball diamond, the lights, and the facilities for the washroom and to stay warm. So far they're very excited. They love everything that they've been able to do within our community. I love the fact that we can offer something and it doesn't necessarily have to be us doing it. They have also, in conjunction with ConnectWell, our own ConnectWell Center out of Community Health Center in Beechburg, they have obtained a grant and they're going to be hosting a winter family fun day at Shaw Woods on December 4th. And that's also free and extended to Whitewater. So I'll forward that poster also to Carmen for distribution. You have to register it so they know how many people are coming, but an excellent opportunity for our young families or anyone from the community to get out and enjoy Shaw Woods. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing at this time, so we will move ahead. Oh, sorry, Councillor McLaughlin.
Just on, and I'm a bit confused, is there going to be a parade in Westmeath? Or is it just...
Yeah, there's two events, Councillor McLaughlin. December 3rd, the Friday night, there's a tree lighting.
Yes.
And December 5th, there's a parade.
There's a parade?
Yes.
Okay, so to further to that, are we thinking about entering a float in these parades, or are we bowing out?
Yes, Carmen's on it. She's our coordinator and she's looking after the float for us.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Well, it just sort of happened.
All right. It's kind of nice because then we can, depending on who's going to be able to join in on the float.
Okay, well, Carmen will be sending out a beautiful invitation for all councillors to take part by the end of the week. Okay. All right.
Can I just ask if Carmen, can you put in everything there, like the tree lightings and going on in Westmeath, going on at the park down below? Thank you. There's a lot happening.
Yeah, it's hard to
keep us straight.
have to be able to mark it in our
Thank you.
calendars. We can't be doing two things at once. It's pretty hard. Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Now we move on to 6.1, election information. A recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it pertains to the 2022 election and key dates. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. This goes to Carmen, please.
So I don't know if you remember, but the last meeting there was a question on the ballot, so it kind of brought in light that maybe we should do a quick report on some key dates and then answering the question on the ballot. So for a question on the ballot, you have until March 1st of next year, so the year of the election, to pass a bylaw. The Municipal Act does state that it has to be a yes or no question. You have to have jurisdiction over the matter. To be aware, just so that council is aware, that if you do want to put a question on the ballot, there is, in order to pass the bylaw, you do need a public consultation time. So, and this was over the Westmeath or the arenas, the question of the arenas. So if we would have to do it rather quickly because the bylaw has to be officially passed by March 1st. So I'm thinking if you wanted to put a question on the ballot, we should bring it forward in the very first meeting in the new year, have a public consultation, have your 10-day notice before the passing of the bylaw, and then once it's passed, you have a 15-day appeal period. So, and again, it has to be a yes or no question. So if this is something that you want to do, we need to do it very quickly because it needs to be passed by. So the bylaw should come forward the first meeting of February. And then just quickly, some key dates. Nomination, the first date for nomination is May 2nd. The last day is August 19th, Friday, August 19th at 2 p.m. is the last day for nominations. The clerk is hopefully the week after, the clerk will certify any candidate nomination papers. September 1st, the voters list is available. September 23rd, spending limits are to be in to the clerk. Friday, October 21st is the last day to register for a third-party advertisement. October 24th is election day. And I think that's that's just pre-election, important dates pre-election. So any questions?
Any questions? Councillor Jackson, please.
I understand that the first day of the new council has also been moved up. Can you confirm that?
Yes, I can. So the first day of, I think I had that in my background. I believe it's November 15th this year. Last year it was, 4 years ago it was November 30th. It is now November 15th.
Do we know why that's been changed?
I don't know why. Oh, COVID.
Lame duck.
Oh, yeah,
lame
that's
duck.
right. It was for the lame duck, correct.
Okay.
I just blame COVID.
Alrighty, so that's. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Umstead?
Sorry, I thought that the whole series around the ballot questions was going to be around the decision-making regarding Reeve and how that's going to sort out. And I apologize for missing last meeting. I thought I got everything caught up, but maybe I'm just missing that one piece. What's the next steps for determining Reeve or deputy mayor at large, or the next steps for that?
We haven't discussed that. It hasn't come up yet. So CAO, when's that coming? Do you know?
And I don't see it on tonight's agenda.
No.
It's coming.
It's coming next week.
So Carmen's done the consultation for it, so that decision has to be done before the end of the year. So
Yep.
Carmen's doing a report for December 1st. We did public consultation, and then she's also asked each one of you. And then the goal is if there be a change supported by council, the bylaw would be passed on December 15th. So unlike a question on the ballot, you don't have to give any notice. It's well within council's authority to make that change. So Carmen will present that on December 1st, and then should there be a change, it'll be passed through bylaw on the 15th.
And is there a timeline that decision has to be made by?
That's the latest, December 31st. So we're just within the window.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. 6.2, site plan control approval for Rogers Communications. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve entering into site plan agreements with the owners/applicants to govern the construction of telecommunication towers at the properties located at 359 Nangor Trail, 1130 Westmeath Road, and 1368 La Passe Road. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Jackson. Just go to Ivan.
Yep, that's fine, thanks. So council will recall Rogers Communication filed the site plan control approval for a property on Zion Line. So for a similar tower having 300 feet in height. So now this is sort of their second phase, if you will, of the tower implementation to support cell phone reception. So there are 3 properties in question as part of this report. I understand Rogers may be applying for a 5th tower, if you will, and that'll come at a later date. Just another part relating to the background. So council did pass an amendment to the site plan control bylaw to require that these communication towers obtain site plan approval. One of the key components of that is there's a public consultation process, and that process is the one established by the province. So for council's information, Rogers did communicate or do the public consultation process in accordance with Industry Canada requirements. So that's notifying all the property owners within 3 times the height of the tower. So that'd be 900 feet. They received no comments on the three different sites. So staff, again, are supportive of this initiative. It'll support telecommunication within the township, and we're looking for council's concurrence on this matter. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. What? Okay, sorry. Okay, 6.3, site plan control panel, or control approval, sorry, for 503 Rafting Road. Recommendation of the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve entering into a site plan agreement with Summerhill Resorts Limited to permit the redevelopment of 503 Rafting Road, subject to the final approval by the planner, bracket EDO. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Olmsted. And this goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the present application is submitted by JP2G Consultants on behalf of the current owner, Whitewater and Wildland Tours Limited, care of Summerhill Resorts Limited. So the property in question is currently, as I understand it, through a purchase and sales agreement, being purchased by Summerhill Resorts. Summerhill essentially operates a number of campgrounds, RV parks throughout the province of Ontario. They recently acquired Logos land within the township, so they're looking to expand within this area. So ultimately, they are planning, as time progresses, the full build-out of this facility, of the former Wilderness Tours site. However, they are proposing in the short term, or in the very short term, if you will, for implementation next year, a first phase of development. So the first phase of development includes, and it's denoted in the report through a series of bullets, but would include 62 existing trailer sites. So those are the former trailer sites that were used by Wilderness Tours. Some are serviced by hydro, water, wastewater, and others are serviced by 1 or 2 of the services. Use the reestablishment of 8 cottages and 1 beach house, if you will. The existing tourist establishment, so the main commercial facility or building, and the opening of the existing pavilion building. So there's a pavilion building that's used sort of for wedding venues and the like, so they're going to also include that in phase 1. To support their application, they've submitted detailed site development plans. Those are the ones you're looking at now, and they were attached to the report. They've submitted wastewater treatment system assessments, so they've engaged an engineering firm to look at the existing septic systems, the existing tanks, the lagoons, and they've reviewed that and confirmed that they are appropriate for this type of development and this scope of development, so the number of sites. And they've also hired an engineering firm to look at the source water, do a source water assessment, so examine the wells and ensure there's a good quality and quantity of water. So keynotes here, phase 1 of the redevelopment does not propose any subsurface site work, so there will be no digging of roads or digging of lots and putting in new pipes. This is all existing sites, existing services in the ground. There are a few units that will be serviced by a new water pipe. It'll be placed above grade and covered with some topsoil and material, but again, no subsurface changes to the site. So staff have assessed this proposed use against the policies of the official plan and zoning, and we are certainly supportive of this. This first phase is well scoped for the existing facility. And we would examine additional requirements as part of a future phase. So the owner, we've been in conversations with Summerhills, and certainly as part of a future phase, if there's any excavation, any servicing that'll occur, there'll certainly be additional requirements, and they understand that. So staff are supportive, and we're looking for council's approval. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Jackson?
So they've purchased the property already? It's all in place?
I think it's currently in the process of being purchased, so the
Okay.
application was executed by Wilderness Tours or Mr. Kowalski.
Right, okay. And I think Area 1, where the 20 service sites, existing hydro and water, is the area that the horse trailers used to go and stuff like that, and I think that was all serviced.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, no, I think it's going to be a great addition to Whitewater region and a great use of the property, and we welcome them to the township.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Mackay?
Now, you're saying all the wastewater and sewer water goes into a lagoon, into lagoons and then sort of,
So some of the sewage goes into a tank, which is then pumped through a force main into the lagoon. Some of it is, and that's how the use of the site was. Like they've always used those lagoons in the past. There are a few septic systems throughout the property, and those will also be used as well. So there's sort of a combination. The one thing to note, I'll add, is some sites are not serviced by a septic system or a tank. So they're going to use the internal systems of the trailer. So all the trailers, rec vehicles have systems within it. They will pump that occasionally out of the trailer and then empty it into the tank that is connected to the lagoon. Yeah.
so it seems like a cheap sewer system. Why didn't we do that in Cobden? Just saying.
So I guess one of the key things is the systems that are in place have been approved either by the Ministry of the Environment or the Township. And they're going to continue to use the existing systems and operate them similar to how they've been operated in the past.
And remembering they're seasonal, right? They're seasonal.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson?
I just wanted to follow up on a couple questions. But first I'll state, and I'm very happy that we have some progress on that sale of the property, and it's great news from a tourism and a business economic development perspective. So thank you, staff, for doing all the work behind the scenes to make that come to the table. I just want to make sure I understand, and it comes back to that wastewater that we just spoke about there. We're not proposing in the current phase 1 that any wastewater will be moved by a septic truck at all. It'll either be used into a septic system or through their system into the lagoon.
That is correct and not correct. So
Okay.
the existing trailers that are not connected physically to a septic system or a system to treat sewage. So just a trailer sitting there, they have a holding tank.
Yep.
That tank on the trailer will be pumped into a truck from Summerhill Resorts that they're going to have on site. They're going to take that truck, empty the tank on the trailer, drive it to close to where the main building is, where the restaurant used to be, and there's a big tank there that forms part of a huge system, which is part of the lagoons and service the restaurant in the past, and they will discharge it into that tank, and it'll be treated through that process.
Perfect.
But I guess on that note, there's no sewage leaving the site going elsewhere. It'll all be treated on that property.
Perfect.
And if I can, Mr. Mayor, just reiterate what Ivan has said, is these are existing systems. The site based, and if you look at the report, talks about zoning and official plan and the rest. And the existing tourism operations that were on this site had camping. So these are existing serviced systems that had similar uses. Camping was used. Due to my age and having a camper and having decided to park it, I just want to say that compared to the heydays of The bungee jumping and the rafters, I would say that we're a quieter bunch that tend to partake in this type of seasonal use. Well, it depends, maybe. But compared to 20-some, 19-year-old rafters, I'd say. So I just want to reiterate this phase, and Ivan has done a really great job of conversing with the applicant to say, at this time, it's about what's existing on site. Anything above that will require different approvals, and they'll have to come forward with that. So, and on the environmental side, Ivan also touched on in the report that the environmental piece was also reviewed. There was a third-party review of that. I forget what the company was through JP2G. So, just wanted to reiterate that about existing uses and servicing of the site.
Yeah. No, sorry, Mayor. I just want to follow up with two things, and I that's what I understand too, CAO. So I just wanted to make sure. The existing site is all MOE approved, all the uses are MOE approved, and they've been certified by an independent engineer as part of the sale.
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect. Good. And the last one is just if someone was to see a problem with anything to do with the septic system anywhere in our township, there's a procedure to report that, right?
Yeah, certainly. They could just contact the township, and we'll investigate it. And if it's a matter that is a provincial jurisdiction, then we would communicate with them.
Outstanding. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Just, and I think I know the answer to this, Ivan, but with a change of, I guess, changing from one business to another business, there's no development charges involved in this?
No, and no, there's no development charges that'll apply in this first phase.
In the first phase, but
Yep.
if there was expansion from there on, then there would be,
There may be.
there
applicable-
may be, there may not, depending on what the.
That's correct.
Okay, no, I was just, I was pretty sure that's the way it was, but I just need a clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Now, will there be like people bringing their own trailers? Like like a vacation trailer park, you bring your own trailers?
Yeah, certainly that'll be an option to users, yeah.
And one other thing, that road is a little bit, we might have to do something with that road.
And are you referencing Rafting Road, or are you
Yeah.
referencing the driveway?
No, Rafting Road.
Rafting Road? We'll go and examine it.
I think there's ruts and dips in it. If you get that many people, you're gonna.
It's not that bad, but if we get the heavy trailer traffic on it, it may tear it apart. But I
Yeah.
think it's about 8 years old. I'm not sure, but I think it's 8 years old, somewhere
Yeah,
in
we
there.
did refix it there once.
Yeah, but there's been a lot less traffic on it the last 3 years, so
True.
hopefully,
Okay.
hopefully it'll help it last.
Thank you.
Any other, Reed here?
Yeah, and I think Councillor Mackay touched on this. So the majority will probably be seasonal, Ivan, is that correct? Like, do you think you can see many transients, or is it
It'll be all seasonal.
all
They
seasonal?
typically, I guess, open springtime, and by November, they're closed.
Okay. But
So
no-
it's a seasonal thing through the
Yeah,
summer.
no, I understand that, but I mean, as far as people coming in and out, different, like, trailers, like,
Yeah.
majority, will they leave them there year-round, I guess is what I'm saying? Or do they pull out in the fall?
As I understand it, Summerhill's resorts are typically seasonal site holders. So they're not the individual weekenders. They're kind of
Okay.
the seasonal things. So that's my understanding. But again, nothing would prevent them from having somebody come in on the weekend. Just want to make that clear as well.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin again?
I'm just going to add to that, that there used to be a lot of trailer traffic with the horses coming in and out all the time. So I would assume that this will probably be a whole lot less trailer traffic. There may be, and there certainly be less public traffic than there used to be. So really, I think it's a double win for the road.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, we'll now take a 5-minute break. Okay, we're back at 6:20. And we go on to 6.4, Part Lot Control Development Agreement. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region 1 approve the designation of lands not subject to part lot control for Block A of Westmeath Plan 421 Greenway/Hilltop Drive. And 2, authorize the execution of a development agreement with Tara Langlaw and Paul Provost to implement the environmental impact study mitigation measures. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor, who was the second one? Olmsted. Councillor Olmsted, sorry. Back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. So council, this part law control application, council will be familiar with this as it pertains to Wren Subdivision Phase 2. So BEI recently did a part law control to consolidate some properties in Wren to build semis. In this case, we're looking at a property that is described as a Block A. It's relatively large in size. It ranges probably about 25 acres. It was created back in '73 as part of Westmeath Plan of Subdivision 421. So there was an old Plan of Subdivision in '73 for this property and all the ones that surround it around Greenway Drive, Hilltop Drive. So all the lots around on the other side of the road from this property were all created by a Plan of Subdivision. So when you have a Plan of Subdivision, basically this block exists and you cannot redivide that block unless you apply for severance or consent or through part lot control. So part lot control is a mechanism to subdivide land that was formerly part of a Plan of Subdivision. It's generally less expensive and quicker and easier to do. So that was the process that Tara and Paul have consulted with us, and that's the process we recommend they proceed with. So what they are proposing here is to redivide this larger parcel into 4 parcels, 3 of which would be between 3.5 to 4 acres, so parts 1, 2, and 3, and the last part being 13 acres in size. So that last larger part, there is a bit of a water course that runs through there, so they're making it significantly larger, if you will, to provide for developable area. They've submitted an environmental impact study to support development on that larger piece of land that is next to that water course. And they've also submitted Phase 1 karst assessment. So these lands, amongst the other ones in Westmeath, are known to potentially have karst topography. So they've submitted those 2 studies as well. So those studies are typically a condition of severance, but in this case, we've asked them to do those studies in advance of submission. One thing to note is when this block was created back in the 70s, it was originally restricted for residential uses. So they passed a zoning bylaw, after this lot was created to restrict residential uses on Block A. However, in 1981, that bylaw was repealed. So bylaw 81-9 was the first Westmeath zoning bylaw. So the original bylaw was repealed and this property was zoned seasonal residential. Now it's in a waterfront vicinity zone and allows for residential uses, including single-family homes. So we anticipate that those four lots would be developed with single-family homes. So the development proposal conforms to the official plan, zoning bylaws, and we would execute a development agreement relating to the studies. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Jackson?
It's interesting. I drove around this block on one of my last motorcycle rides around the township. And it is that larger block is got a lot of wetland on it. But my thought, is there any, and obviously they won't have any water access, right? Or is there water access that they can use somewhere?
Yeah, so to that point, so the owners of Block A also own Block B, which is across the road. If you look on the map here, just to the bottom right, there's Block B. It is their intent that as part of the transfer of each of the new lots, they would provide deeded access to the water through Block B. So each of these 4 lots would have deeded access to the water.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yeah, Councillor Nicholson. I thought there was somebody else.
And just a point, because the other councillors may receive phone calls, I have. A lot of people remember the original intent of the property when it was first subdivided. It was designated as green space, non-residential, but that was since changed in 1981. So if we've done this research already. If you do receive a phone call, that's why that's included in the report, so you also have that information.
Good to know. Didn't know that. Wasn't aware of the history. Okay. I do remember, though, during the Great Flood, that property was high enough that it was surrounded by water, but it wasn't impaled by water. The other roads around there were, and some of the lots were, but that particular area wasn't. So, any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.5, Sam's Road. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region 1 authorize improvement to a portion of Sam's Road to a municipal road standard at the proponent's cost from seasonal maintained to facility development. And 2, direct staff to inform the proper proponents of the required submissions and to bring forward the necessary agreement and bylaw. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Reeve Regier. Back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks again. So this report pertains to the extension of a municipal road known as Sam's Road. So there's essentially a portion of Sam's Road that is seasonally maintained. Adam and Julie have they're in the process of purchasing land shown in yellow here, adjacent to the seasonally maintained portion of Sam's Road. You'll notice there's municipal road at the top and portion of seasonally maintained road. So their property fronts on the seasonally maintained portion of the road. Our zoning bylaw does not allow for the construction or development of a house on a seasonal road. It has to front and have direct access to a municipal, county, or provincial road. So as a result, Adam and Julie are proposing to, at their cost, extend the road known as Sam's Road and extend the municipal road to their property. So making the necessary improvements to the portion that is currently seasonally maintained to bring it to a municipal standard so as to have frontage on what would be deemed a municipal road and essentially be allowed to be issued a building permit. Couple things to note. We did examine other options, private road over a municipal road, winter maintenance agreements, but legal and staff have been directed that this process that's being proposed now is the best option and would best serve the general public, if you will. Council will remember Malloy Bay Subdivision, so that's Morglan's Trail off of Bromley Line. So this is a very, very similar, not extremely similar, but very similar agreement. So in that case, we entered into a public road agreement with Mr. Lapointe to convert a private road to a municipal road. So that road is currently under development, and we'll certainly be doing inspections of that shortly. So in this case, we're looking for Council's interest in extending Sam's Road entirely at the cost of the proponent. He'd be required to submit pre- and post-construction engineering drawings and enter into an agreement. The agreement would speak about who's doing the work and the requirements for sign-off and the like. So we anticipate that the future maintenance of this half of a kilometre or 600 meters would be about $1,000 a year. So that would be for snow removal and grading and other similar maintenance. So staff are generally supportive of this. It'll allow for developability over an additional portion of Sam's Road. So certainly assist in economic development. We're just looking for Council's view on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Jackson.
I just have a question. Is the portion of the road, the 66-foot road allowance, is it going to be large enough to create that turnaround for a snowplow? Or is there going to have to be a portion of the property that they're purchasing transferred over to the township to own and maintain?
So I would say that based on the minimum radius of the cul-de-sac, they will be required to either grant us an easement over their property or transfer us land. Likely an easement, just because we're not, yeah, we'll have to examine that as part of the next step. But certainly they will, the 66-foot is likely not wide enough.
Wide enough, yeah. That's my concern, as in 10, 20 years from now, then we'll be going, somebody will be going back, not us, but you never know, be going back and reevaluating that. So I just want to make sure that we get it done right the first time so that they don't have to come back and apply later on. That's all.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
That road, we used to maintain it in the summer, and we haven't done it in a couple of years, and then Claysy's knocked all the trees down because we wouldn't come and cut the trees. So I don't know how that's going to work out with them, or maybe they don't care. They don't have as much say in it, but the road was a lot better condition. I just went down there last week. It's rough, and it gets even worse as you get over the creek. And so it wouldn't hurt us once a year to go through with the grader and just grade that out. Not necessarily where they're going to go, but the whole road, that we
But
still were able to use it.
The projection is for this couple to build a house, I do believe, or just projection to take the property?
Their intent is to construct a house, yes.
Okay, but it's not in the works at this time, so there's no rush for winter maintenance this year?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank
So
you.
if they fix the road, we'll plow right to their house.
That would be correct. So yeah, so the goal here is to extend the municipal road, municipally maintained portion of the road
Okay.
to their property.
Yeah.
Those improvements that are needed will be at the cost of the owners.
And if I can just add, and Lane can add here, because we had a question on another, just because a road is seasonally maintained, so i.e. not plowed in the winter, doesn't mean that we don't do any maintenance for summer access. It just means it's not plowed. We had another situation where a road hadn't been brushed or graded in a while, and that's been addressed. So I know Lane's aware of some of those and is working on those as well. So just if it's a road just not plowed, doesn't mean that it gets no maintenance. So we've clarified that so everybody's on the same page.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, just for clarification, Ivan, the roads right now goes partially in, is seasonally maintained, is that correct?
So
Or-
just, yeah, so essentially 700 meters from Fletcher Road is fully maintained by the township
It's
as
full-
of today. Yes.
So it's plowed in the
It's
winter
plowed,
time?
everything, yeah.
Oh, okay,
And
okay,
then-
no, didn't realize that, then that other portion is the portion you're talking that,
The owners are going to improve.
Bring it
and
up.
we would deem it as a municipal road and we would further
Well,
maintain it after
once they
that.
bring it up to our standards, then
Yep.
we would take it on, and it would be part of our road network. Is that correct? That I think is the normal procedure, isn't?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And it would change from seasonal to maintained.
Okay, no, my biggest question was, and I'm not familiar with this portion of the road, but as long as right now it's winter, that the 700 meters is plowed and we look after that part and it's up to our standards, so there's no cost to us to upgrade it? Is that correct?
Well, we have no intention, as part of the approval of this, to make any improvements to that 700 meters.
Okay, and then they're going to bring their 590 some meters up to our standards, and then we'll assume it, is that?
That's correct.
That's the way it'll work, okay. I don't know, as long as they're bringing it up to standards and it's the same standards as what the other portion of the road is, I have no problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, in this individual case, I think I'm completely understanding the logic and appreciate the $1,000 a year in operating costs and the fact that they're putting the capital investment in the building of the road and potentially a turnaround. It makes sense from that perspective. My concern isn't in this case, but the other numerous situations that are flowing through my head, and not Malloy, and I don't want to get into it right now, but I'm just curious if we can get more information at some point in time. What are those checks and balances when we analyze whether or not a road should be private or taken over by us? When we think of all the private roads out there, if they all came to us at a kilometer at a time, $1,000 is nothing, okay, we can accept it. But when there's 50 kilometers in just that were flooded out during the flood, that's more than $1,000 a year. So, and I just want to make sure that we have a process to analyze those kinds of requests. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think one of the key things here is that the improvements that are required to this 595 meters are not substantial. Like, the owners have sort of costed it out, if you will, and it's not unfeasible. So if you're in the case of upgrading a private road to a municipal standard, it might be substantially more costly. But certainly examining the operating cost, if we keep allowing these to proceed, certainly that'll have to be, examined for over a short, medium, and long term.
And I would add, and once we, with road assumption policy, we'll address for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
And just to clarify, this is a municipal road. It's just not seasonally maintained. So there is quite a huge difference between a private road and a municipal seasonally maintained road. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Road assumption, Brazeau Road. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the acceptance, assumption, and dedication as a public highway, the lands shown as Part 2 and 4 on the draft survey plan attached as Document 1 to the report, name the lands accordingly, Brazeau Road. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor Mackay. Back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks. So as part of the approval of severance applications, the Committee of Adjustment has the authority to require what we call road widening in the cases where the road allowance is not the minimum requirement for a local road, or the center line of road to the front property line does not meet the minimum standard. In the present case, the surveyors that were retained by Helena and Landon determined that there was not 10 meters from the center line of the road to the property. So there's two small strips of land, parts 2 and part 4 on the plan attached, that would be required to be transferred to the township. So the purpose of this, basically the severance, by filing an application for severance, we have the authority to require any conditions that the committee deems suitable or appropriate. So typically we always require this so that if ever we were to expand Brazeau Road or widen Brazeau Road and we required additional land, we wouldn't be required to expropriate. So this is an opportunity to do that free of charge, entirely at the cost of the applicant. So they're getting their severance in exchange of this road widening. So this is very consistent with other road widenings, and staff are supportive of it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.7 Brumley Street. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve keeping the present name of Brumley Street in Cobden. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson, thank you. And this goes to Rob, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a duplicate name, Bromley and Bromley. As part of the process and our commitment to public consultation, we notified the landowners. They've submitted a petition saying that it's an inconvenience. And because they're kind of unanimous in wanting to keep the name, despite the fact that we've outlined that it is a duplicate, and are aware of the risks, staff are suggesting that we keep it as is. We did suggest Gerald Bromley, who is a World War II a veteran who died at war at the age of 21, who was born in Cobden, and that name had cleared from the county, but we appreciate what the residents were saying. I do want to thank the Bromley Historical Society that helped me try to understand why the street was named after Bromley and the history of the naming of Bromley Township. So I want to thank them publicly for their feedback and their research that helped on this matter. So once Council makes a decision, we'll inform the residents on Council's final decision.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Jackson.
Well, I guess my question is, We're stirring up a lot of discomfort with some of our ratepayers. And I guess, to me, if there is a duplicate, should we not be being advised by the Renfrew County paramedics or to say that there is an issue by somebody so that we can bring forward a legitimate reason? Not that this isn't a legitimate reason, but when it is two different areas, Bromley Street, Cobden, Bromley Street, Beechburg, right?
Bromley Road, Westmeath, Bromley Road. One's a road, one's a street.
Westmeath, that if there is an issue for emergency services, then I'm all in favor that maybe perhaps we have to do something. But I think we need to stop identifying roads that need to be changed and only bring those forward when required to do so due to an emergency. And I know it's too late after an emergency has happened. I get that. But we've had the 911 system in place. So Bromley Line has been there since, and I don't know if it was there before the 911 system was in place, because a lot of those roads were called second line, third line, and they were all over. So it was there. So I don't think I agree with the recommendation. I just, I struggle sometimes with us going out and stirring it up, and unless we have a legitimate complaint or a reason to do so.
If I can just respond, this would be the only other case of a duplicate within Whitewater region.
I hope so.
Yeah, and I think to your point, waiting till like I live in Westmeath, and you wait a while for an ambulance to come. There was an incident at Spotwood. So if an ambulance going to Bromley Line is not the same ambulance coming from the same, that's coming to Bromley Street, that being said, that's why we do the public consultation process. I know people get excited when there's a change, but we notified them before the change happened, and they vocalized their view. So, but this and Meadow were the only two duplicates within the township. And we're trying to be in conformity with our policy. And I get their point that it should only be going forward, like Opiongo roads, golf course roads. There's, I don't know how many across Renfrew County. So I get that. But in this case, it was the only remaining duplicate. So with the process, I think, has worked in the sense that we've heard from the residents and they're fine. So we're not recommending a change. We're not going around just for the sake of it. It's really because duplicates can be. And yes, maybe there hasn't been a problem here, but it doesn't mean that it could be problematic. But I get so that's the report why we brought it forward. They did a petition. They've sorted it out. They're very clear on what their position is, and that's why the recommendation is worded that way. But there won't be any other reports. There are no other duplicates.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. (6.8) Detailed design and land request. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region 1 reject a request for the sale of land intended for a pathway near the Cobden Astrolabe Arena, and 2, direct staff to ensure completion of the detailed design for the Cobden Astrolabe Arena and Library addition as previously directed. Motion and seconder, please.
Can I ask that those two motions be two directions be separated? Because I think they're very separate issues. Yeah.
Okay, so we can vote on them separately.
You can get one mover, seconder, and then vote on them separately.
Okay, so we will go with item number 1. Reject a request for the sale of land intended for a pathway near the Cobden Astrolabe Arena. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. And we will put this forth, and then we'll come back to number 2.
You can get a mover and seconder to put both on the table and then just vote on them separately.
Okay, mover and seconder for number 2. Direct staff to ensure completion of the detailed design for the Cobden Astrolabe Arena and Library addition as previously directed. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted and Councillor Mackay. So now we have 2 on the floor at one time, so we're going to talk about number 1.
So if I may, so we did receive a request from the immediate property owner about the pathway that was secured as part of the parkland agreement with BI, the developer. And there was a linear pathway here between this block where the semis are and the curling club leading to kind of the back of what we consider now the back of the arena. I should note that that was secured as part of a pathway to ensure pedestrian access from the mid-block to be able to access those future recreational lands. And there's also servicing there. So my understanding in discussing with Lane and also through WSP, who's the engineers on the design work, that the servicing of the building will be through that linear pathway. So my understanding is the owners would like the extra space for kind of additional amenities, but those lands were secured for park purposes. So what staff at the time, when this request came in and we notified her, said, well, this was received as part of a parkland agreement about what they wanted us to do. And then we said, but if you're if you're not happy with that answer, you can either come as a delegation or formally request council to reconsider the matter, which they've done. The other one is when they purchased their properties, and there's some correspondence from the residents there, they were told by real estate agents about that it would be a parking lot at the back. So there's no restrictive covenants on the property. And I should just point out that they took possession in December 2019, but then our process in terms of public consultation and coming back to council, looking at all the options in terms of the addition, were presented in public at council in May. And I should also point out that while I appreciate that they were okay with a parking lot, it will be a lit parking lot that will be used. The intent of those lands when the Bennett farmlands and subdivision get fully developed is that it's going to be a busy community space, and there will be recreational amenities, not just the addition. So we wanted to bring forward their concerns about the scope of the project. Note that because of where we're at, council had already approved the use of the funds for the detailed design and engineering. Basically, that second direction is, unless you want to direct us otherwise, that work is going to be done in about 6 weeks. So basically what we're just saying is we're reiterating that, no, we're not changing course. The architect has noted that the library addition could be slightly moved, but that would cost about $30,000 extra in design costs, or completely eliminated. But I should say that we did have extensive conversation with the Ag Society following the February open house, and then did some follow-up work with the library, and then the library was engaged as well as part of the design process, and that we're really nearing the end. So I know it's difficult when you have kind of changes in land use and new users moving in, but the entirety of those lands were going to be used for park and like for the township's use. And so the architect kindly provided some sketches to show kind of the scope. The other thing I should point out, and I've pointed this out to the residents, before this project moves forward, council will have to determine a funding source. Although we applied for ISIP funding through the province and feds, we were not successful. So before even that project would see the light of day, where it's going to be shovel ready in terms of detailed design and engineering, but it hasn't been funded, so there's not a start date for the construction or moving forward with that project. That would require council approval. So just want to provide that background.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to have discussion on item number 1, and then we'll vote on it. So any discussion on item number 1? Councillor Mackay.
I don't believe that a real estate agent would steer somebody wrong. I can't believe that. Just saying.
Misinformation is
Yeah,
terrible.
really,
Yes.
it's hard to believe.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other, Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, just maybe this is a question for Jordan. I would assume that having a library attached to the entire project would give us a better chance of landing funding. Would that be accurate?
I would think that's a pretty accurate statement. I know typically when Rob had mentioned about being shovel ready, there's a lot of different aspects that go into a build, and typically with funding they like to see other community partners.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on item number 1? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. So item number 2, any questions or concerns? Oh, sorry. Yes, no, we are, okay, sorry. I messed up there, never mind. Any questions on item number 2? Councillor Jackson.
I guess I want to move forward. I mean, we've already approved this, and I just wanted to make sure that it didn't get sidetracked with the other item, and that's why I wanted to make sure that it was separate, just in case I got sidetracked. But with regards to that pathway and the concern that there's going to be motorized vehicles on it, perhaps those where you see the big cement things, leapfrog, ballers, that they're added, so you can't drive an ATV or a snowmobile through or whatever, but there are going to be bicycles and people walking through for sure. But I agree, you don't want traffic going through there. It's a path. It's not.
And it will be winter maintained, so we have to be careful. It could be seasonal what we put up and have to remove maybe in the fall, but.
It's a sidewalk, yeah, as long as it's clearly identified as a sidewalk and not any wider than a sidewalk, I'm okay with that. But we just have to make sure that nobody's using it for any kind of vehicle traffic, including snowmobile or ATV.
Well, not only though, I do believe it should be fenced as well. So I don't know where we stand with that, but.
Fenced on the sides of it, yes.
Yeah.
So that they don't go on other properties. Yep, no, I agree.
Yep.
And I'm in favor of moving forward, just as like I was in favor of moving forward before.
Okay, any other questions on number 2? Mr. Olmsted, Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question as well. I see it says optional fence at property line. So perhaps it's something we can include in the scope. The township has detailed design on the fence.
Be included at the time of the sidewalk.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
If I can just, the owner has just contacted me to just confirm, and I'll note that it's on the report at the end of analysis. They took possession in October of 2020, and the revised drawings were presented in May 2020. So I had December here, but I just want to correct it. She's confirmed that it was October. So I just want to confirm that. And just on the fence and the bollards and stuff, as the project would move forward, we would go through a site plan process that would talk about how the parking lot, they're designing the parking lot as well. So all that would be part of the site plan process. And in recognition of being good neighbors, we would ensure that, for instance, the type of traffic on the pathway, fences and that type of stuff, landscaping with next door, that would all be addressed through the site plan process.
And also too, we have to keep in mind for, spring flood, spring water flow, snow melt, etc., rain, storms, whatever. So is that road is on the storms, is it not? So that we could put in a drain if needed?
Yeah, so the detailed engineering is looking at the entire site, including the future site parking lot. So engineering would look at that.
Okay, we just don't want any further problems. If we can correct them all at the right time, that's the time to do it. Any other questions? Councillor Nicholson?
Just for the sake of, can we clarify it's not a pathway, it's actually a sidewalk?
I guess the correct terms would be an easement. Is it an easement? Because we have water lines underneath, right?
No, so the question is, you will confirm all of that as part of the site plan when the site actually gets developed. The lands were, so you got parkland. It's a linear part of a linear park. So it can be a sidewalk, it can be gravel, it can be paved, it can be, you're gonna make that decision once you move forward with the process. So you can call it what you like. But we were cognizant of the concerns of making sure it's pedestrian cyclist access.
Yes, okay.
And what that will look like, it'll be through the site plan process.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that we don't waste any effort in a detailed design. That I think round the table here, it's clearly pedestrian and cyclist, no motorized traffic.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? Call for a vote. All in favor? Number 2? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to sale of land, industrial park. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to proceed with the sale of public tender of lands in the industrial park, specifically located at lots 26 concession B, east of Muskrat Lake, in the former Township of Westmeath and now the Township of Whitewater Region, and described as Part 2 on Plan 49R-18939, located at 51 Industrial Park. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. Rob, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the last parcel that we own in the industrial park. It contained the old water system buildings and ponds. A few years ago, when I first got here, we finalized, there was a landlocked parcel that was sold to the farmer to the north. We got, as we've been working through the decommissioning of the site, so that would be part one. Part one was previously sold to the adjacent farmer, and we're dealing with part two. So we've been dealing with the decommissioning of the site and that haven't quite finished. However, two abutting landowners have both expressed their building within the industrial park and have expressed continued interest in this parcel despite the decommissioning. So what we're recommending is we got legal advice. We would proceed by tender with a minimum bid in keeping with what we've been selling parcels in the industrial park. We did remove there will be a secondary little pump. It's not technically a pump house. It's a little building that I was once in that will be removed. And the diesel pump within the building, for instance, will be surplus. But generally speaking, by selling the property as is, where is, it would become the responsibility of whoever purchases the property, and then we won't have to spend additional funds to do that. We've looked to see if we would use this property for other purposes. We don't think that it's appropriate at this time. If business owners within the industrial park can really utilize it for whatever purpose they want to. So we're recommending proceeding through a tender process with a minimum bid of $20,000 and then with a closing of the sale by February 15th. And then this allows us to kind of close that last chapter. In terms of the connection to the water line that goes to the existing fiberboard plant, that has been decommissioned, as well as the connection to LADS. And so there's some minor work that would be done by the township, but mostly these are different kinds of lagoons, holding ponds, and the building and the wells and everything that's on the site would go with the property as is, where is. And there is a small piece on kind of the bottom right corner that we would retain where we put in the cistern. So when we discontinued the water system, we put in a cistern there to have some water supply within the industrial park. So we would keep those lands because we're a municipality. We don't have to meet with setback requirements. So we would retain sufficient lands for us to be able to access and service the cistern. And so that would be completed prior to the finalization of the sale and registration of a survey to be able to keep that small piece. Any questions I could help? Or Lane can help me on all the technical aspects of this.
Okay, just to reiterate, the cistern that's going to be installed there is actually for fire?
Yes, so it's a water, and it was previously installed, and then there's just some adjustments that need to be done to it. But yes, it's a water cistern so we have additional water capacity on site.
So we can use the water, but we also have to refill it then?
Yes.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Nicholson.
CAO, you just you triggered me on the where is as is point. For example, those two holding ponds or whatever they're referred to as, is there some conditions of the sale that we should put in place to make sure that those things are dealt with and not left? I just want to make sure that we're not creating something that may not get addressed by a new owner that we would like to have addressed.
My understanding is our EDO, our planner EDO manager, has talked to some of the interested parties who might need those facilities for their purposes, that they would have to go through approvals to deal with them. So the interest in the property might be because of that. So whereas as is means that they inherit all aspects of the property, the liabilities and otherwise. So just like when you, on a residential sale. Mm-hmm. So our understanding is a proponent might want the site with the structures and appurtenances that are on the site, and if not, they're theirs.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question then. There's nothing left on that site right now that we feel should be removed for the benefit of that greater industrial park?
No, and I think for the purposes of our liabilities, we did consult legal and just want to make sure that as part of the legal process, it's as is, where is. But there's like a big cement box there that had water in it, and ponds that had water in it, and there were wells. So we're being very clear with the people that might be interested in this of the where is, as is components of this. But from an environment, we're We're not aware of any other environmental liabilities, for instance, like an underground gas tank or something of that nature that we would, so we're not aware of anything of that nature. It's just the structures that were there based on the former use.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we go on to 6.10, LED street lighting. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to an update on LED streetlight conversion project. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. This goes to Lane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Invari has completed their assessment and their detailed design for the streetlights. Originally, during their proposal, they figured that a 72 watt streetlight fixture would be sufficient to replace the 150 existing HPS streetlights, and that's within the line that we've installed. We're in Beechburg in the past. We changed them streetlights with a 72 watt fixture. Through their design, they've come out that a 72 watt equivalent to 150 is actually too bright for the national standard, and they're recommending that we go with 3 different types of streetlights. 49 watt luminaire for our local road. So so in Cobden, for example, on a back street, or it'd be that, and then increase to a 64 watt near intersections. Then with the ones on Highway 17 to increase to a 100 and 123 watt LED. With this recommendation, there's additional cost savings. They're comparing that during their proposal that it'd be a cost savings of 62% over the existing HPS lights. With the new changes to the 49 watts, there's additional 9% savings. With the next steps, they're proposing to go ahead and order the lights, and with tender release on December 8th, with a closing on January 18th, and tender award on February 2nd. Part of the design process, part of this that we're looking at intersection lighting. We do have 45 streetlights that were been changed already throughout the township, and we're going to use them on Haley Road, and then also with key intersections through the township. And also the next steps too, we're also looking at the Main Street decorative lights, which further report will come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rob, please.
Just wanted to add one thing that Lane clearly set out in this because it's come up, and you always ask about this every year. You'll notice in here that Lane has noted intersections that are on county to county road. We've been told by the county you can request and they'll do an analysis, but when we have, they said no. So what we're basically saying to you is we can do that and you won't get lights, or while we're doing this, here are the intersections we'll get done. So from a safety perspective, the list is there. So we are recommending some intersections of some that have come up year over year. So for instance, La Passe and Lookout. I guess it's on the county lookout side, but I want to just be clear here. In the past, we've said, well, those are county responsibilities. The county will allow us to ask for a request on whether it would meet the standard. What we're saying here is because we're doing this project, we're recommending that we deal with this list. The alternative is we ask and we still get a no. So, so I just wanted to direct council to that area, and specifically if you're not interested in that, that you tell us so before we proceed with the tender.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I say we ask the county, why are we paying for the county roads? I mean, they typically take a look at it as well and say yes or no. I think before we say anything, we have to ask that question.
Okay, thank you. So we should come up with a list then. Councillor McLaughlin.
That is partially where I was headed. I mean, if we're going to put these lights in, and I know we've gotten lots of requests, but I think we need to have a policy where there's a certain criteria that has to be met before we decide that we're going to put a light. Not just because somebody has wrote in and said, we need this, we need that. I think we need to, and I thought we were working on a policy, much like the county has, so that we'll meet the criterias and it's not pick and choose and this one says that. So before we proceed with any of that, I think the first step would be to get the policy, as well as Councillor Jackson has said, to contact, once again, the county and find out why they're rejecting our requests. So we know we need to have a policy in place before we ever start, because I don't like willy-nilly this one, that one, without having a criteria. So.
Okay, so we need to get our hands on a copy of a policy and then go from there.
And if I can just clarify, just the county hasn't said no, just so that I don't have to issue a statement at the next meeting. When we've asked them in other locations, for instance, where we did ask and we did get was Westmeath and Beechburg Road. So I should say that first, so I don't have to reissue. So they will look at it. So I think what we would want from council is a direction one of two ways. One, that for those intersections that staff have identified, based on that they're important intersections, that we could ask the county. So that would be one recommendation. And then we want a recommendation is whether we're pulling the ones that we would ultimately be responsible for. So those first 4 bullets under the end of page 2 and the start of page 3. So the 4 on Foresters Falls Road at township intersections where they're intersecting with township roads. Whether you want that in this project, understanding the costs savings of doing this while we're doing the rest of the lights, or do you want to wait on those to have the policy? So that's 2 things that I would ask from council. So if there's the first one that's probably easiest is a motion to direct staff to, or that the council requests the county to look at the Beechburg Road, Gore Line, La Passe Road, and Beechburg Road. That would be a clear motion that could be moved and seconded. And then if we can get some direction if we're proceeding now or after a policy on the 4 on Foresters Falls Road.
And if I can add to that, thanks, Rob. So the county does have a policy, and if it's two county roads, it's county responsibility. And if it's a county road and a municipal road, it's up to the township.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I thought this whole replacement of streetlights was for replacement purposes only, and I think we need to get on with the replacements. I mean, we're trying to fix old streetlights that are going out. Nowhere was it ever suggested that I can remember that we were going to add streetlights to the project. So I think they should be proceeding with replacing and then set a policy in place, analyze it, and then come back with some recommendations at some other point. But we need to move on with these replacements. We've been waiting a number of years for these, and they need to happen.
Okay, thank you.
We were asked last time we brought this forward to look at these at the intersection lighting. So just to be fair to Lane, we were kind of asked to look at it, and I know, and there were some dead zones that were noted that were been passed along to the Councillor. So I think if council agrees on dropping the rural intersection lighting, we would just need a motion, like if we're dropping them all, that's fine, that's easy. But if you want us to proceed with the 4 Enforcers Falls, we need a motion for that. And are we formally asking the county for the 4 on the county roads? Because they would pay for them if it meets the requirements.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, so just, we've had 2 notice of motions on streetlights, at least for the 4 that I've put forward twice now. We got the Westmeath one, and I remember Kathy making the announcement, Westmeath and Beechburg Road. The other ones were put forth to come back as part of the replacement project. So we did direct staff to propose it this way. And I'm good with it, and I'd rather lean forward. I see an economy for us to do the installation of new lights. I can appreciate maybe that we might not want to do all of them, but if the tender is going to go out and I don't want to delay the tender, I'd put it in the tender with options. I would go to county and I would say to county, we want you to put lights in these 4 intersections. And if they say no, then we make the decision whether we want to engage in that portion of the tender. But I tell you, I think we need lights in those areas. And if it means delaying a couple of years to fight county policy, we still won't have lights where we think we need them. So we're going to be forced to make that decision. But I don't want to delay the tender or not take advantage of the economy of savings by doing all of them at the same time. So I'd like to encourage that. And the municipal ones, I mean, the traffic's going up. We're seeing the building permits increase. I think we're going to have to take a look at it. And again, do we wait or do we put it in the tender and maybe shake out a policy before we actually implement? But I'm encouraging us to tender everything and then come back and maybe make delineating decisions on the county ones and the municipal ones. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I think that's a good suggestion, to include them as options and also approach the county in the meantime to get those answered for us where the county road meets the county road. And I believe Lane is correct with regards to county road and municipal road, but we can throw those requests in as well, just in case. You never know.
Okay, thank you. So the CAO has that written down, I'm sure.
I think we're good. So we'll put them in as options A, the stuff that we might have to pay for. Option B, the stuff we don't want to pay for. And then we'll follow up with our colleagues at the county. I know sometimes the assessments take some time, but we'll at least expedite that as soon as tomorrow to not delay the tender.
Okay.
Yeah, and the tender will be a unit price contract, so it'll be per unit, so we can add the tract as even during the process.
Councillor Nicholson.
Mayor, a second issue, and it just has to do with the tender. I was approached by folks in the industry about LED lights. Sorry, it is a very big issue at the other end of the township. And just to make sure that when it comes to maintaining these lights, future maintenance, that the company that we get to do that maintenance is hopefully able to react to our demands. And we're not, I'm not sure if the tender includes future maintenance or if it's just installation, but if it does include future maintenance, I would want to make sure that we have a good flash to bang. The request goes in and they can implement it, and we're not getting a company from far, far away to service something that may take days to get serviced. So I just wanted to make sure that was a consideration, please.
Have we gotten to that point yet? That's a question for the CAO.
So I would just say that although we use a company that's been very good to us for maintenance, there's no contract that I can find that confirms that. It's just a vendor of record we've historically used. So either through the process of the tender or following, if the tender does not include future maintenance, we will likely have to at some point either do we'll have to just clean that up, because to be honest, we're going based on who serviced townships 20 years ago, and that hasn't been, like, from a procurement perspective, that's not legit either. So I believe, Lane, that future maintenance would be separate. This is really the install and installation. The future maintenance piece would be a separate item that we would look at.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I do know a bit of the history on that. It does go back a number of years. And some of the same people from the previous company who were with this company took on the business per se.
Yeah, and so if I can just add, yeah, and one thing we're looking at, a lot of our areas do have, they're not on photocell, separately photocelled. They're on relays. And for example, in Forster Falls, you probably have complaints that they're all out once, because once one goes, they all go out. So they bypassed the relay, ordered parts, and then one part, they fixed one part, and the other part came defective. So they're still working towards it, but.
Yeah, it's been going on for some time, and hence let's get them replaced, and then we don't have to worry about it. So, okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, I think Councillor Jackson had her hand up before me, so
But we've heard from her, so we haven't heard from you.
Okay, well, I was just going to make the comment that we need to move forward sooner than later because the lights in Forster's Falls are burning 24/7.
It's because we can't get parts.
Yeah, absolutely, because the parts can't show up. So there's a good reason why let's get moving forward.
I agree, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Just one question. So have we purchased the lights already? Or is that will be part of the RFP as well?
No, so as part of it, in various contract was to design it and order the lights.
Okay.
And that's what tonight we'll do, just with the recognition, because it was going from a 72 watt, they figured.
Right.
We'll go down to the smaller wattage, and it'd be purchased hopefully to more.
Okay, perfect. And I guess the other question is are they going to warranty those lights for at least a year, if not two, so that if they need to be replaced at some point in time, over the next 2 years, that they're replaced at their cost?
So the actual fixture itself is warranted for 10 years.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. And they'll warranty it, like, because what if it needs to be replaced? So it might be warranted but somebody's got to have the cost to go up the pole and change it, right? So who's going to cover that cost?
Yeah,
I guess is my question.
Yeah, so the one thing, the one difference between, if you go back a few months ago, when Invari presented the proposal, they had two options. One was all-inclusive design, install, and purchase all at once. Council decided to go with just the design and install, and then we would tender it out so that way local companies can bid on it. So in that stage, it was covered because it's part of all one big package. In this case, the light would be covered, and part of the tender for the labor install, we'll have it. So we'll have it stated that if it's a defect from installing it wrong, it'd be covered for a year. But if it's a defective light, it'd be covered for 10 years. But the actual labor to install it would be Township.
Okay, that sounds perfect. That's about what we did at Laurentian Valley, and yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that was covered.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to notice of motion 7.1. Am I reading the whole thing? No, just the therefore. Just the therefore. Okay. Notice of motion 7.1, community safety zones. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region directs staff to undertake a review of community safety zones and whether they could be appropriately implemented in certain parts of the Whitewater region, namely school zones and other areas of active transportation to ensure pedestrian and cyclist safety. Motion and a seconder? No, we have the firster, which is Councillor Nicholson. We need a second, which is Councillor Jackson. Thank you. And now we go to the floor, or who has this? Does Rob have this? No. Councillor Nicholson has this.
No, I think it speaks for itself. I don't need to amplify. And you saw it come up in the park active transportation presentation today, so it's tied in with that directly, and it's actually one of their proposals.
Hey, any questions? No? Seeing none? All in favor? carried. Thank you. Now we move on to notice of motion 7.2. What am I reading, Carmen? There, okay. Notice of motion 7.2, Westmeath Boat Launch. Councillor Nicholson. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region direct that formal engagement take place with federal and provincial partners to examine options to maintain public access to this body of water. If it is determined that the DFO launch in Westmeath is the best strategic option to provide access to this large portion of the Ottawa River between Pembroke and Rapids of Rapid Road, then all three levels of government must work together to fund and manage the project to open and maintain the Westmeath boat launch. So we have motion by Councillor Nicholson. We need a seconder. Councillor Jackson, thank you. And back to Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, this one has all the information in it that will aid in sending any letters. But it's a very important issue, and most of you probably have received phone calls or had conversations with residents about that boat launch, either whether they're even from Whitewater region. It's a widely used boat launch that, simply put, we can't afford to maintain. And by putting this motion forward, I'm arguing that it shouldn't just be our taxpayers who pay for its maintenance and its existence. I argue that the province and the feds should come to the table and offer us something, some help, if they agree that this is where the water access should be to this body of water for the province. I acknowledge that LV also has access point, but it is not developed as far as ours is. So right now ours stands, would be more usable. They need to invest in one or both of them. Anyway, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Mackay.
That boat launch has been dredged before, hasn't it?
Early 90s, late 80s. It's quite some time since it was dredged last.
So you have, like every 10 years or 20 you have to dredge it?
After the installation, it was only dredged once, and they said they wouldn't do it again.
Okay.
It was because of cost, and to secure the actual dredger, etc., and the float was, I guess, I don't know where it came from, but there's none locally, so the costs were quite imperative. And the Reeve at the time, the mayor, said they wouldn't be doing it again.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, Jordan's done some outreach with DFO about the dredging issue, and we have a preliminary cost of what it would cost. I think, I don't know, Jordan, like, are you comfortable saying?
It's in the motion.
Okay, yeah, $200,000, and you'd probably have to do it every 2 years, and you need environmental permits. In the good old days, they just put a backhoe out there and created the point. Those good old days are no longer with us, and the quote Jordan's gotten in conversation with DFO is $200,000 every 2 years. So, yeah.
Just depending on the weather, it's all weather, right? Weather related, whether we have high water in the spring and sediment has dropped off, or if we have high flow from the creek, from the main street, then you get a lot of sand coming down, which doesn't help. It helps build it up. So, Councillor Mackay.
I don't really know the boat launch, but I know where it is. But can they move it anywhere? Is there anywhere that we own property that...
It's not our boat launch.
Oh, it's DFO's,
It's
right?
the feds.
Yeah.
We're the user.
Okay. Never mind then.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. I remember this particular issue came up way back before 2010. And at that time, our Deputy CAO, Annette Mandevelt, had looked into trying to get costs, and it was astronomical. It was just beyond. The hoops are just way too hard, and I totally agree with Councillor Nicholson that unless all three players are on the plate, it just can't happen. Unfortunately, there's way too many hoops and issues to deal with until all three players can get together. And as you say, it doesn't belong to us. So I think I like the approach, and the only thing we can do is just keep beating the ground until we're able to get somebody or get some help, because it's badly needed, that's definite. Anyway, I wanted to mention this has been an ongoing issue for many, many years, as I've sat here for quite a while.
I agree. Councillor Nicholson.
If I see you take your socks off to count. And just to further on Councillor Mackay's point, we launched it as a challenge to our recreation task force that was established to look at recreation in the Westmeath area. And we said, okay, you know the water, half of them are fishermen, or they've been 3 generations fishing off of that. And we said, where else could we put a boat launch in this area? And we looked at every potential, you know, there's access to the islands, there's, you know, some deeded access to islands, there's municipal right-of-way or municipal road allowances that go to the water. We looked at everything. And yeah, there may be an alternative, but you'd end up having to buy property from someone to make a boat launch. And no one's going to want a boat launch beside their cottage. So there is no easy answer. And it all points back to we need to invest in that site. We need to figure out a way to maintain it and fund it ongoing if we want water access. And water access includes, and you saw it in the motion, DFO, Ministry of Fisheries and Oceans, MOE or environmental coming and studying the caves or the fish habitat. There is no access to that body of water except by Westmeath. It is important, so we need someone to help us with it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none? All in favor? Carried, thank you. 7.3, unopened road allowance, bracket Fletcher Road. Councillor Mackay. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to remove the large rocks placed on Fletcher Road, blocking access to the unopened road allowance by November 30th, 2021. And further, that abutting landowners be informed of this work so that they have the opportunity to move any gates limiting access to private property should they wish to do so. Motion by Councillor Mackay. Need a seconder, please.
If I could, I know it's not on the table, but I should point out that thanks to Lane and Kyle, they've shown that the boulders are technically not on township property. So just if, I know that you haven't received a seconder, but if you go to the one that shows detail, the boulders are actually on private property. So the unopened part of the road allowance doesn't have the boulders. So the one that's called detail, which would be the first one, Carmen, I think. The one with, yeah, but if you go to the overhead, the one just before.
And you can see, sorry for that, see the photo with the hydro pole?
Yeah, it's on the other side of the hydro pole.
Yeah, it's not shown in the picture.
Yeah. So although we think the rocks are ours, they're not on our property. The hydro pole, so the unopened road allowance is actually on the other side. So it's not as simple as moving the rocks. So why we've included this is that, because I know we've all been asked, move the rocks, move the rocks. It's not about the rocks. It's you'd have to construct, there's a piece of road missing there between the end of the travel portion of the road and the unopened road allowance. So if you don't have a seconder, that's fine. I just wanted to point out is the way the motion is worded based on what Councillor Mackay had requested. What we've confirmed through this work that Lane has done with Kyle is that that's actually not on the unopened road allowance. The unopened road allowance is on the opposite side of the hydro pole. So if you don't get a seconder, you don't have to talk about it, and then another councillor at some point can bring forward a different motion. But I just want to point that out for the public listening. The rocks are not ours. The boulders are not on our property.
Isn't there a sign at the end where see where the cars are parked? There's a checkerboard sign there that belongs to the township.
Yeah, so it's not on the table. So what we could, I would say if you can maybe chat with Lane or Kyle about the unopened road allowance and where it's located. if there's no seconder.
A procedural question? Is that possible? Is that within our guidelines? So the information is new to the councillor who made the motion. Can he amend the motion now, or is it procedurally correct for him to take the motion off the table if it's not correct anymore?
If there's no seconder, you can't amend a motion. So the main motion has to be moved and seconded before an amendment motion. Carmen would tell you this, and I shouldn't tell you this. I should let her tell you this, because she can totally do this.
Okay, so sorry, I'll look at
impeding on
Carmen.
her abilities. Yeah, no.
So he can't amend it, but does he need to put another? Does he have to put another notice in, or could he bring it forward amended to the next? Because he put it forward with the information he had, and now we're changing that.
What I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, is that instead of doing a notice now, it may be best to visit it on site with the road superintendent when time permits before bringing this back. Because I think this information is good in clarifying for members of the public who have brought this up, not just the councillor, but for all of us.
Okay, whenever that happens, invite me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. No. So we're going to move on. Yes?
So again, it's going to be one at a time, because if you all convene at, if our road super takes you all, it is considered a meeting and it's got to be an agenda. So no, but if there's quorum, then so if you you got to watch how many people go.
So you understand that?
No, so it's two of us.
Yeah, just follow up with the road superintendent separately.
Got two hands, so I'll go with Councillor Olmsted, please.
Yeah, and I noticed that getting ready for this motion coming forward, noticing the pictures. I would just caution that we know the implications of instructing anything to do with private property and going on people's private property. So I would say this one, I think we should be very, very careful, as we know that there's a group that would love to see us do something stupid as well, right? So I really hesitate to instruct anything to do with somebody's private property, because, and that's why I'd like to see this motion just go away now. It's not properly constructed. I know what the intent is, but just the way it is now, it's not properly constructed in light of this information. So I think just going forward, we need to be very, very careful. I know it's a very contentious issue of this access and right away, and I get all that, but I think we need to be really careful of how we move forward with something like this.
Can I ask you a question? The yellow line, is that the property line?
Are we not discussing this, and should it not move on? I think it's
Okay,
time to move
all
on.
right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. End of discussion, we'll move on. Okay, is there any other notice of motion? Any other notice of motion? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on, please, to adoption of minutes. Regular council, recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the regular minutes of November 3, 2021. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Regier and Councillor Mackay. All in favor? Thank you. 8.2, closed session. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the closed session minutes of November 3, 2021, understanding that they remain confidential. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Mackay. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Correspondence 9.1. Read at your leisure. And we go into bylaws 10.1. Recommendation that be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the November 17th, 2020 agenda be taken as read and passed. Are we doing all three, CAO? Clerk, we're doing all? Last meeting we had to change, but this one, it's all. Okay, so I'll read that again. Be it resolved that the bylaws listed on November 17, 2021 agenda be taken as read. Motion is seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. All in favor? Carried, thank you. No closed session, and we are adjourned at 7:34. Thank you very much.